got to ask you a couple questions about MIT. I got there in '89, so I missed you by a couple years, but it's a very special place. And I still remember walking through that front door of Lobby 7 and looking up at the dome. And even though I was this punk kid, I still somehow felt honored to be there. And I think it changed me in so many ways. Some I don't think I'll ever really understand. I also had a fraternity experience there, which was a really important of my evolution as well as kind of like a man. Just curious what the experience was like for you and what it was like as an 18-year-old kid from Ohio going to Boston, Cambridge, and going to a place like MIT.
Well, it was definitely a very, very, maybe the most important formative experience of my life. If I think about the impact it had on me, when I graduated from high school, I was the valedictorian. When I got to MIT, I was one of 400 valedictorians. Every single person at MIT was the biggest overachiever in their various community. And so it was interesting to be surrounded by so many overachievers. Also, I came from a middle-class family in a public school, and I came in contact with a lot of children from upper-class families and private schools, and they had 2 years of calculus, or they had 1 to 2 years of college education before they showed up, and we were just going to college, So I saw people from every class. I think out of my 9 fraternity brothers, there were like 6 or 7 Eagle Scouts. It got to be kind of silly. And then I saw people from everywhere in the world, right? So MIT brought together global elite overachievers. That was interesting. I think the other thing that was interesting was MIT had this ethos of do it yourself, think for yourself, and be fearless. So, they would give you a very difficult problem and they expect you to solve the problem from first principles. And they gave you the tools to do it. I think the third thing I saw was I had some of the most brilliant fraternity brothers. They're the kind of guys that, 18-year-old, 19-year-olds, and they're the kind of guys that get bored in the summer. They take the car apart, put it back together again. One of them took cars apart for a living and put it back together again. The other one had launched a computer software gaming company, while he was in high school, and launched a Pac-Man knockoff, successful enough to get a cease and desist letter from Atari. And so you just saw all these examples of excellence, and it gave you a lot of confidence. I think that's what I took from MIT, confidence.
And that fraternity experience, how can you describe that to someone? Because I think it's so often misunderstood. I bet it doesn't even necessarily exist anymore the way we knew it. But for me, it was so important. I spent 4 years living in my fraternity. I never lived in any other public housing. I grew up, like you said, with people from all over the world, different classes. There were the guys that couldn't afford pizza and the guys that could afford pizza. That was like the divide. But what was that? Because I know you co-founded MicroStrategy with one of your fraternity brothers. So what was that like?
It was, if you dumped a bunch of brilliant Eagle Scouts together into a house to the age of 18 and 22, and they all spontaneously organized a government, then that's what a government, an ecosystem, and a culture. That's what I saw at MIT. It's in retrospect, it's quite amazing. We ran our own finances. We ran our own work week where we would maintain the house. We had sophisticated everything. We had elections. We had a CFO. We had a head of maintenance. We had a social chairman, and we orchestrated the most elaborate social events, the most elaborate construction development events, fundraising events, about Rush Week and all those events, trips. And you kind of took for granted that a 20-year-old could run an elaborate enterprise, with due process. We had parliamentary procedure, we had house meetings, we had votes, we had all manner of intricacies. So it was a microcosm of the world run by a bunch of people that were 12 to 36 months out of high school. And, looking at it today, so many people expect, big institutions to do everything for them, but we were completely self-reliant at the time.